Welcome to our latest episode of Birds and Bytes. Just a reminder, we are recording. You should have received that note. So please stay muted. If you want to keep your camera off, that's totally fine. We do post the recording on YouTube for viewing later. We are going to do Q&A with our presenters today. If you have a question for any of them, please just type it into the chat. If it's for anyone specifically, you can just say who it's for. If it's for all of them, you can say it's for all of them. And we'll get to those at the end after all three presentations. So I think we are about ready to start. So tonight's program is on Chicago area bird murals. The National Audubon Mural Project started in 2014 to bring attention to North American bird species that were in decline. And it spread across the country. It arrived in Chicago in about 2016, and it's spread even to the suburbs as well. Tonight, we'll hear from three of the artists that have murals in and around Chicago. We'll start with Cheri Charlton. She is a Chicago-based illustrator, muralist, and associate professor of illustration at Columbia College in Chicago. Then we'll move on to Ruben Aguirre, a Chicago-based graffiti artist, abstract painter, and contemporary muralist. And then we'll wrap up with Shawn Bullen. He's a New York City-based contemporary fine artist who grew up in Chicago. And with that, I will pass things over to Cheri. Get us started.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully it works again. All right. Can everyone see that? Thumbs up. Good. Okay.
Yeah, looks great.
Because of COVID, I've gotten pretty good at this because I had to teach online for so long. But still, you never know. So yeah, I was invited through the Rogers Park Business Alliance and the Mile of Murals program to collaborate with a group of artists. Ruben was actually one of those fellow artists that I collaborated on this with, on murals inspired by birds that were under threat. So specifically like climate change or loss of habitat. And it was really great because it was the first collaborative mural that I'd ever done. And there were 6 of us. So, you know, it's a lot of agreeing on things and figuring things out. And we actually had this great meeting with one of the representatives from the Audubon Society. And they kind of talked about some of the species of birds and the different types of birds. So we had just decided as a group to sort of split them up. And the group that I was given was, hold on, flip this through, was the forest birds. So woodpeckers, sapsuckers. I'm never sure I'm saying this right. Someone can correct me if I say it. The white-breasted, is it nuthatch? Is that how I say that?
Nuthatch. Yep.
Nuthatch, which are actually some of my favorite ones because I love how they sit sort of almost sideways on the trees. So did a little bit of research after I was assigned the forest birds, and these were the ones that the Audubon Society specifically said were like really under threat, at least back in 2016. I'm sure there may be a difference now or less or more. So a lot of my process you know, that goes into my illustration work and my mural work is just doing the research. So looked at a bunch of pictures of birds, learned a lot about some of the issues that were affecting them, and then tried to figure out a way to tell a story. We had divided up this underpass in Rogers Park. So we each artist had like 2 panels essentially to do. And I was just trying to figure out, you know, what could I do to kind of convey the, you know, both the birds, but also like this threat, and just portraying the birds like in a pleasant way, in a pleasant environment. That was easy. That's kind of like what I did here in different habitats, and on, you know, making sure I spotlighted the fact that they were on trees was important. But then I was like, how am I going to make a piece that sort of speaks to like the threat that they're under? Because I wanted to create like a contrast, and I can't believe I still have these sketches, but I still have these sketches, and none of these were the ones I used, but these were some of my ideas. And then I just like kept working through the process, and I don't actually have the sketch of this one anymore because I was holding it painting and it just disintegrated from painting outside in the world. So then I ended up actually like going completely different, and I ended up, which is kind of appropriate for today in Chicago if you've been outside, creating like this contrast of the birds in a positive, like their ideal habitat versus like a post-apocalyptic habitat. And I did both of the murals with a combination of acrylic paint, exterior latex, and spray paint. A big part of my style is like heavy line work. So I tend to have pretty flat color. And then I love to use really descriptive varieties of line to sort of describe all the contours of things and the details and things. But these are the two pieces. The compositions are actually very similar. It's just the contrast is supposed to be like, you know, the pollution and the loss of like live trees and flowers versus the positive on the other side. And then, yeah, that's kind of like an overview of what I did. And it's still there. So if you're in Rogers Park, I think it's like near Greenview and Greenleaf, you can check it out too.
All right, fantastic. Ruben, you're up next.
So I have a few sketches from that same mural that Cheri was just talking about. It was quite a while ago, so I don't have the best records of everything that was involved. But like Cheri was saying, it was collaborative with a lot of people actually. So I think the collaboration part was probably the bigger challenge, working with, like, I want to say there was 8 artists maybe. Um, so yeah, so I do have some sketches. The collaboration was probably the bigger challenge. And, you know, we had the database, like Cheri mentioned, that had like the endangered species by region. So, you know, going through and looking and seeing which birds I thought would be like visually interesting or fun to paint. That was kind of how I got to where I was. And then, you know, I'm generally an abstract painter, so I'm really big on like color and shape and form and textures. So this was a little bit outside of that, but it was also very fun because I got to apply those things in ways that I don't normally do. And I had a really good time doing it. I did not use this sketch, but that was one that I did in preparation. That's one of the final works. I believe it was a wood duck. So I just kind of try to frame it out so that it kind of has its own place in the mural without taking up too much space on either side. Because, you know, we're combining different artists with different styles. So it was, in my opinion, it was, you know, kind of everyone had like their own like framed section. And I feel like just having having the presence of the birds there kind of calls your attention to like, oh, what kind of bird is this? So if the viewer takes an interest in finding out what that is, I think it would be pretty easy to see that the theme is endangered species. That's another one. Those are a few of the other artists as well. And then I have some other works just so you can see what the rest of my painting looks like. So kind of like the bird murals, like taking some inspiration from like real life creatures and then applying the way I paint to it is the same way that I do my abstract murals. So I kind of pull from like natural landscape stuff and then build on that. So like in this mural, the blue piece in the middle, that's like an aerial view of the Chicago River at this particular point where the mural is located. So I kind of use that as like the focal point and then build around it. And the history of this building was a textile warehouse when it was originally built. So I was trying to throw some patterns and kind of make it look like kind of fabric-y, like billowing fabric kind of stuff. So you know, to me, they're very similar in approach. It's kind of like building a natural landscape, but giving it a very stylized approach. And that's the main the focus of my mural work is like that. So this is like another landscape. This is right at the lakefront at Division Street. So the colors are very much inspired by the water and the sky, the horizon. You at different times of the year, you get different light, the different colored skies, different colored water. So putting that together in a way that I think is interesting It's kind of the way that I build it up. A couple more. So the orange shapes in the center are pulling from a specific flower species. That is the flower that's commonly associated with the Day of the Dead in Mexico. And those flowers are, they're laid on the ground as to create a trail for spirits to know where to go to, visit you, or wherever you are. So I use that as the concept for this mural because it was for the Day of the Dead show at the National Museum of Mexican Art. So the flowers are like adorning the entryway, right? Kind of like piggybacking off this concept of like leading the way for spirits. So yeah, but it's abstract, of course. So pulling from plant species from the sky, what I would consider a landscape painting. This is another take on a landscape painting. There's like an underwater section in the lower right corner. The top half is like trees. You kind of see how it's pieced together. It's very collagey. There's a lot of patterns and textures, but they're all pulling from like real life things. And I just recently did another bird mural. This is the first one probably since that last one in 2016 for a private client. This one's a lot more literal. It's not as expressive, but also very fun to kind of exercise that that part of my skill set. That is all I have for photos.
All right, thank you so much. Okay. Next, we'll go to Shawn. I'm going to share my screen for this one.
Hi, everybody. I'm Shawn. Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes.
Yep. Cool. My name is Shawn Bullen. I'm from Chicago, from Hyde Park, and I currently live in New York City. But I first painted a mural for the Audubon Society in New York City in the Washington Heights neighborhood, where I believe that's where the project started, where James Audubon lived. And I've always been interested in birds. I actually don't know, to be honest, that much about the bird species, or I would love to hear if you guys have the species of all the birds. You probably know better than me, but it's been a while since I created these pieces. But when I was a kid in Hyde Park, I got the opportunity to create a community service project in Indiana where we built wood duck box houses in the state park over by the Indiana Dunes, and that kind of sparked a bit of intrigue in the humans' participation in helping endangered bird species. And so it was very exciting to come across the Audubon Mural Project and get a chance to participate. So this piece is in Oak Park, and it's right by the Green Line train. I can't remember which stop, but maybe Harlem stop. But yeah, it's 350 feet long. This is just a small portion of it. Features various locations from Oak Park, and the general idea of the mural is it's nature in the city. I think it's really important as someone I live primarily in cities, and I really find that the best way to enjoy living in the city is to have spend as much time in nature within the city as possible. And so getting more information about the local endangered bird species in this area, I just created this very large collage of different elements of the local area, and then also the creatures that inhabited it. But you can feel free to skip on to the next slide if you'd like. Go down to that one. And if anyone knows what bird species these are, please tell me. I've got them written down somewhere. But yeah, so essentially my approach was to just really collage and overlay images and go from very direct this is a bird to this is a bird with like the surrounding area kind of overlaid into the wings and into the into the stomach of the bird, as you can see. Just attempting to make something a little bit less representational, somewhat abstract, and kind of push the layers a bit. You can feel free to, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask too. Feel free to go to the next slide if you like, or we could probably skip back to the main view. Whereas there's this, we can click on the bluebird maybe. And so all of these pieces that we're looking at right now are part of the same mural, done with spray paint. It was, I think, 2020. I started in 2019 and finished it up during the pandemic in 2020. And it was one of the biggest projects I've ever done. And bees are also large, a lot of my artwork has birds and bees as kind of a reoccurring animal themes. Feel free to go back to the main view and check out another. I think there's another bird quite to the top. Yeah, we'll do image 1258. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you so much. Yeah, so across the mural, there's just these various different birds, but also something I do that makes the images a little bit more my own is I incorporate a large graffiti piece across the whole painting. So you can kind of, I was hiding it for a while so that way people wouldn't question, why they're paying me to do a giant graffiti piece on their building. But, after proposing murals without the graffiti piece hidden in it, people were asking, where's that element that brings it all together, the kind of flowy line. Little did they know this is a huge tag on their wall. But so yeah, if you want to go back to the main view or the main, we can maybe just scroll through. Yeah, let's do the one 3167. I think that's the mural that you guys are probably more familiar with. This one's in Evanston, Illinois, also with the same organization that I believe the other two artists have worked with. What do they call themselves? Evanston Mural Arts Program, EMAP. Leah and Dustin facilitated this. I think this is the first mural they did for that project. And, I don't really always predetermine the meaning of my pieces, but there's also, again, a big graffiti piece through the middle. My friend's name is Rusto. So R-U-S-T-O is what it says on the middle. People thought it said like rush or something, like you're rushing in and out of the city. It's very open to interpretation. And my intention with doing that is not really to be like, this is a graffiti piece, but it's more just to create an image where the graffiti is hidden within it. And it allows it to feel a little bit more open-ended and abstract. But of course, you have the bird and the bee on the left and right. And once again, honestly, couldn't tell you. I think the bird on the right might actually even be kind of more of a mythical made-up bird that I created. But if anyone knows what kind of bird it looks the most like, I would love to know. But yeah, just a big rainbow, as you can see. And someone thought it was like kind of like a sexual reference with the birds and the bees or something, but that's not really it. It's actually, it can be if you want it to be, but when you're driving or when you're on Lake Michigan, you're seeing the sun come up. Essentially, I took a picture and isolated these kind of bands of color that you see as the sun is coming up, and really about the sun rising and the transition of the color. And if you want to go back to the main view, maybe we can show a couple more. I don't want to take up too much time, but the one on the right is the first piece I did for the Audubon Society mural project, Audubon Mural Project. And that one was in, where was that? That was in Washington Heights in New York City. They had like the whole project they were doing out there were on these roll down gates. So I believe that's the eastern bluebird or western bluebird, and then the house sparrow. I honestly can't remember the names. Sorry, it's like something I've always had a hard time remembering names of these birds that people always ask me. But yeah, and if you want to go back to the main view, we'll show a couple more. So on the left, there is a piece I did in Flint, Michigan. Just a huge painting of and the birds I've always chose. I kind of consulted with the people at the Audubon Society and got a locally endangered bird species of that area. And So I started with this piece has, so it's latex paint done with a big roller. So that's about, I'd say it's probably 20 to 30 feet tall. And I did it mostly all from the ground. I did the roller color just with a big extension pole, and then spray paint for the actual bird. And freestyled the background, which also has a big graffiti piece in it that's sticky. And then the bird is projected in from the image. We'll go for a couple more if you want to go back to the main view, and let's do the Miami birds. I think this is the last set. So these are actually on canvas, and this is a bit of a self-directed project. Let's start at the last one because it's actually backwards. So this is a 9-piece series, and it's all birds, endangered bird species from Southern Florida. And I created these in Miami on canvas, and they're still there. So if anyone wants to spend $90,000 on a series of paintings, please let me know. If you want to go back to the left, that would be great. And so it's actually pretty crazy because in Miami, in these big buildings, you just see these huge birds. Everglades snail kite, I believe is this one. Huge birds flying around, circling, like kind of ominous feeling. I have a feeling that they live on the rooftops of some of the skyscrapers. They're very beautiful. And this is all spray paint done on canvas. You can keep going to the left. And as you see, the green line is this graffiti piece, which I kind of started to feel like doing these murals about bird conservation while I'm spray painting and polluting the environment felt very hypocritical. So maybe the graffiti piece being this like green line through it all is like simultaneously like the poisonous gas that I'm releasing with my spray paint into the air, probably hurting the birds more than I'm helping them. But and maybe then also with the intention of it being good for the environment by creating green space, something like that. And you can keep going. And so essentially what I did for this piece, which I wish I did the background first, but I just laid out the birds and then pulled in the green line around it and just kind of went back and forth. We're trying to incorporate this abstract element with the birds. And then after doing all that, I realized that I wanted this really seamless blend across the whole thing. So I had to tape off all of the elements and then paint the background. You can feel free to go to the next and keep going. Yeah, no, I think this is the last one. But yeah, it was a great project, and I showcased them during Art Basel last December. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I've got other murals, but I think that's all I've got for today.
All right, thank you so much, Shawn.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I'm going to open it up to questions from the audience. So we did have quite a few very helpful folks here. No surprise that we're able to name your birds that you didn't remember, Shawn. So Laura said that there's an eastern bluebird, red-headed woodpecker, downy woodpecker, and American robin, and maybe some indigo buntings in there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're in the right place. We all like to identify birds like outside in the wild, and then also in art. So, you know, it's second nature to everyone. All right, let's start with questions. We have a question from Judy who wants to know if there's any text associated with the mural. Like I'm assuming that's on site, if there's any like a plaque or any description of the murals.
I know that the one in Rogers Park that Ruben and I collaborated on, they did put a plaque up. And I put in the cross streets in the chat too, where people can locate that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. I have a question for Ruben. The other two artists let us know what type of paint they used. What type of paint did you use for yours?
Oh, spray paint. I always use spray paint primarily.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right, and Shawn said that he had a little bit of background with wood ducks and the wood duck boxes. Cheri and Ruben, did you have any background with birds or any connection to birds at all before this project?
I had done some bird paintings before that. I don't think they were too accurate. I mean, some of them would be like very like replicating photographs, but nothing extensive. I mean, definitely not anything that required me to research birds. I think reading about the birds for that particular mural, that was the most I've ever read about birds. Uh, so yeah, not really.
I would say about the same. It was really cool to be invited to do it because it definitely sparked my interest in it. And now I feel like I'm paying attention to birds more, especially when I go camping or go up to Wisconsin or out in the country. And I feel like I see woodpeckers all the time after doing those murals, which is kind of fun. But since then, I've done a couple bird pieces. Um, not but I really enjoyed the fact that it was connected to like, environmental issue. That was like really special about this project for me.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. That's very interesting. So we have someone who wanted to know if they were interested in helping to create some murals. Can you talk about permissions, the funding, and how that process would go? And then I'll just ask if anyone wants to commission a piece from you, if you wanted to share your contact information. For anyone to answer about the process.
Do you guys want to talk about how fun it is to work with CTAA? the city of Chicago sometimes. I feel like for the project that I participated in, I was really lucky because Ruben mentioned it was managed by a couple out of Evanston, and they thankfully handled a lot of the logistics. I would say from my point of view, if you're interested in painting murals, pay attention to like Chamber of Commerce websites in the city. I see a lot of calls for murals through those. And also like there's an organization through the city of Chicago called DCASE that has a pre-approved mural list that you can apply every 2 years to be on. And that's a way that like older people find you sometimes. But yeah, I feel like you have to almost like get your first mural or do a couple murals and get noticed. And then that's how it worked for me. Like after I did a couple, then they just started to come easier for me. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways to go about it. I mean, that could be like a whole long conversation, but I think generally, having a portfolio, having something to show is just going to help get more work, or just being able to be found online, I guess.
The question was about like how do you get into mural painting? Was that what we're talking about?
No, I guess it's two parts. One, if you wanted to, let's see, they wanted to help bring a mural to a location. Either I don't know if it's public or if it's
I
private.
misunderstood that question.
Yeah. Okay.
So if somebody else that was like, oh, I live in this neighborhood, I see a blank wall, I want to find an artist and create a mural. I mean, I think that's if people have that interest, it's great because like Cheri mentioned that it's really the logistics of getting to the point where people want the thing to happen it's a lot of work. So if somebody in the neighborhood that, especially if you have any connection to like the Chamber of Commerce or the business itself or the building owner, that can help expedite the process like heavily. So if you see a wall that you're like, this is a perfect spot for a mural, the steps I'd say involve make sure you figure out who owns the building. If it's private, then that owner has generally the ability to say they can happen. If you get their permission, that's like the majority of the work, and then it's a matter of finding funding. Which if the building owner is willing to put up tons of money to do it, that's great. If they're not, then there's other ways to do it. You could either fundraise or find some local grant or something. But like we were saying, especially for artists just getting started, if there's no money involved, at least like the first couple pieces that you do, even if you're kind of just having to get just enough money to pay for the supplies, then that can help artists like build that portfolio and start to have some momentum. But yeah, if people are interested in helping to make that happen, I think it's a great cause, because I think it really does make a big difference in people's community to participate in that process, but also to just have the outcome, which is, I think, pretty huge.
And for those of you that have done murals at private residences, do you know if it requires a permit from the city?
I don't think there's any permits required in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, you would just like need it if you were going to block a sidewalk or a major road or something. But I think you can pretty much do whatever you want as long as you're not irritating your neighbors.
Great. And then someone wanted to know if, how to get an Audubon association to sponsor a project. I don't know if anyone has any insight into that.
My personal experience is nothing against the Audubon Society, but they haven't put $1 towards one of the murals that I've done. No offense to them, that's cool. Well, they're doing their thing. I know that they're doing the Lord's work out there. But no, I think it's the cool thing about the clearly this is such a passionate thing that people want to do, because it's mostly a choice to work with the Audubon Society. And the Audubon Society provides really great, information, and that's more their role for me, at least so far in these processes. I think they're also like the legitimacy factor of having them associated with the project usually helps in terms of if you're to look for funding in other ways. But I mean, just email them. They're pretty responsive. We could share their contact. I don't know if that's something that's okay.
And would any of you mind if I chatted your email address, your contact information into the chat for everyone in case they wanted to sponsor? Okay.
Please do.
All right, great. And then I have a question for all of you. What was like your favorite part of a bird to paint? Like the eye, the feathers, the beak, and then what was the most challenging part, if there was one?
Yeah, I can say that for me, it's the feathers. I think because there's a lot of color combinations that I feel like I don't see in other places, and like some of them look like iridescent, and like trying to paint those kind of things is really fun. I mean, I don't try to paint them realistically, so I kind of just like look at them and take inspiration and kind of do it in my own way. But that's probably the funnest part, is like kind of trying to exercise something new and like make something that I haven't made before. That's fun for me.
Cheri, do you want to go?
Sure. I would agree with Ruben. The feathers are really fun. I really kind of like their weird, like birds have the most gnarly feet ever. And like the claws, I don't know if they're claws. But I just think that was really kind of interesting to like try to depict those too. Very dinosaur-like.
I also find that I think that as far as so when I'm painting birds, I notice that there's like the attempt to obviously do it accurately, but then birds have such intricate, color transitions that at some point I built a bit of like a process to make it a bit like abstracting what it is that's actually there into something that is easier to paint, because it's just, if you're trying to do like every single feather exactly in the right spot, it gets a little bit like mind numbing. And so I think after painting a lot of birds, I got down like a bit of a step-by-step thing that I could go to, which was kind of deviating a bit from what they actually look like, but keeping the overall structure is pretty much the same. So having this multicolor, like some of the birds, like in one feather, there'd be like 10 different colors. So you start with like a really dark blue and do like slightly lighter blue to white, essentially, so you can have that very voluminous feather. And then just doing that at like, with 1,000 feathers on one wing was like, I don't know, at times like, wow, this is like absurd, like I should just do like 3 colors or something. But it's really fun. And the eyes too, you can put real like emotion and detail into the eyes and make them nice and glossy. I mean, really, I like painting all of it. Like the beak, it's like there's these different like textures that each part of the bird's body has, where like the beak having that very slick highlight makes it look like it's almost like like wet or something. And then of course the feet, like you said, are like dinosaur feet and really weird. I usually dreaded painting the feet because it was like, it takes a long time. Like you have to really like switch up the process, where the feet are like an entirely different like painting style. But I like it all. Love painting birds.
Yeah, so I guess maybe if Scott or people are trying to recruit artists, is there a best way to do that? Are there certain questions they should ask the artist?
I think it would be pretty easy to put out a request for qualifications. I mean, to do a request for proposals, usually people want to get paid for creating a proposal. So you kind of need the budget in place already, I think, before you get started with that. But in terms of fundraising, I don't, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of different ways, and I'm not sure what's the best way. But yeah, I think securing the funds first and then asking people to submit would be the way to do it.
One thing.
Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
And then, oh yeah, and then Scott, I don't know if you saw it, I chatted out the email addresses for all of our artists. So if you want to connect with them separately,
that'd be great.
at your property, that
So,
yeah. Okay.
What would be a round dollar amount that we should be looking at to start?
$1 million.
1 million.
It depends on the size of the wall, but I mean, I think that like you should probably keep the figure at least in the $10,000 plus range, because it's just there. You know, I mean, if it's a tiny mural, it's one thing, but if it's a large scale wall, if there's any scaffolding or lift needed, that's a huge part of the budget. Paint is pretty expensive, so like you got to keep in mind the size and the quality of the wall. Like if the wall is deteriorating at all, you need to make sure that the wall is pressure washed and repaired, scraped and cleaned before you do it, because a lot of people have us show up to a wall and it's, you know, falling apart, and then the sad thing is that you paint this beautiful mural that'll be gone, half chipped off in a year. So that's important. When I always tell clients like $10,000 is a good place to start, because that's just you know, that's like, it takes a lot to do a mural. So there's a lot of time investment, and that's, you know, like likely, you know, 1/3 is to the supplies, and then the other 2/3 is to cover the artist's time and energy. But yeah, that's just a rough estimate. I mean, it depends on the size of the wall. Usually artists will give like some sort of a price per square foot, but one idea that I've always had that I don't see happening as often as I think would make sense is that if you have a public wall that's going to benefit the surrounding community, is just like maybe asking every local business and maybe every resident in the area if they're willing to chip in a little bit and see how much money you can raise like that. But then there's like all these other organizations that provide grants for stuff like this.
Okay, great. Thanks, Shawn. That was some really good insight. Hopefully that helps Scott. Okay, this is the last call for questions. I don't see any more in the chat.
One note on that is Leah and Dustin Pinsky are probably the most resourceful people I've ever met and we've all worked with them. But if there's anybody I would suggest talk to about it, it would be them. They're at the Evanston Mural Arts program. They also did the Rogers Park. So they'd be able to give good advice on which people to talk to, which avenues to go through.
Could you put those names in the chat, please?
For sure. It's the Evanston Mural Arts program, Leah and Dustin Pinsky. I'll make sure to share it. I don't know how to do it right now, but
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, one thing about that too is I think it's a really noble effort or interest of yours to actually be interested in facilitating a public mural. And it's like people like you taking that little bit of effort to do, it's actually quite a lot of effort to do something like this, you know, helps keep us artists alive. So I vote do it. Give us all a call. We'll collab on it.
All right, great. All right, and Shawn, if you can't find that contact information or the website, maybe
I'll email to you.
Yeah, maybe Scott. Yeah, you could email to me, or Scott, you can reach out to Shawn for that contact information. All right. Well, I think that's it for questions. I want to thank the three of you so much again. People have been walking by these murals for a few years now, and it's just been kind of mysterious. So it's just so nice to hear about your inspiration and the processes that you use to create these murals. They're absolutely beautiful, and I know everyone that hasn't seen them in person yet is going to go straight out there and take a look at them. So thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for participating. Have a good evening. We'll see you next time.